You have the beginning of a story that we're hoping to be able to share some other information we found out about a relative of yours. So why don't you start by telling me who this mystery person is that you're investigating?
My father was in the Hare Orphanage. His name is Byron Blake, and I know that he was in there when he was born in 1927. I know that he was in and out a couple of times and in some foster homes.
This would be my husband, probably 61 years ago, when just before we were married, he wanted to show me where he lived in the orphanage, and it was off of High and Lane Avenue. Mm-hmm. And it was a dreary day, I remember, and I'm 22, 23 years old, and I'm crying, and it was a stone building, and it seemed so sad. And I did say to him, well, I don't know if I want to ever hear about this again. Okay. Because it seemed so sad. After he passed away, and I decided that about a year ago, that I wanted to know more about that orphanage. Probably my ultimate is that I would see his name written down there, Byron T. Blake, in some record, knowing that he was registered there.
The story behind it is fascinating because it's so old. It turns out that Jacob Hare was an early pioneer in Columbus. So he comes to Columbus in 1812, and he is being able to buy some of the first lots in downtown Columbus. So he buys corners and lots probably around Rich and High Street, which you know now is in the middle of huge development. Sure. And what I didn't realize until I went later into some of the records was how extensive some of those lots were. So Mr. Hare was able to purchase lots that eventually will go all the way up to 4th Street, where the old Central Market was, and all the way out to Main Street. So he's sitting on quite a chunk of land. So when Mr. Hare arrives in Columbus, he's actually coming in before there is Columbus. Part of his fortune may have come because he was able to sell to those proprietors who were trying to put together the package deal to sell to the legislature to build the Capitol. You know, they had promised a prison, they had promised a state house, they had promised an outlay of money to build other buildings, and here he is kind of in the center of town. And as the other lots come into the city and they're being, you know, sold off and people are buying houses and things, he's getting the income from these. And that's going to be critical later when the orphanage is established, because it's a constant stream of rentals and increases. He's described here as he was plain, rough pioneer woodsman. His investments turned out well, and by these and the increased value of his real estate, it was supposed, at the time of his death, he was worth $50,000. He died in the city on the 3rd of November, 1860, in the 80th year of his age. Mr. Hare left 8 or 9 children, and to these he made no bequest in his will. So he establishes an orphanage and doesn't leave anything to his children. Later records will continue to say that they were okay. They had made their money. So for whatever really deep personal reason he had about creating this orphanage is really sort of a mystery. Columbus has a number of orphans. We're talking from the 1840s to 1860s to the Civil War. Many of the children actually have one parent. And I know from other records I've seen, it's a father and the mother dies and there are 5 very young children and he can't take care of them, so he takes them to an orphanage. This gentleman brings a milk cow. That's all he can give. Monday, April 15th, 1861 at 7:30 in the evening, and City Council is meeting. Of course, the Civil War is really right about raging, right about there, and they are going to establish what will be the Hare Charity Fund Committee. This will now exist from this period of time all the way into the 1950s. The charity was supported not just by the city and the proceeds of Mr. Hare and the rentals and other things, but these are wonderful checks that people were sending in and businesses.
That's got to be a lot of money, $2,300 in 1863.
Right, and when you stop to think there is a war going on, the amount of support that is poured out for the support of the orphanage was really extraordinary. The woolen manufacturing company, sheep growers south of town formed a wool collective, and it existed for decades. Most of the orphanages were overseen by men in a trust, but they hired women to be the matrons and a nurse and usually a laundress. And the matron often had, children of her own. Often she's a widow. This particular case, they decide that they're going to, I think, discharge her in part because there's been an expensive purchase made, and that was a sewing machine. Obviously, in the insight is here, you have to watch your P's and Q's.
It was said to be excessive. Suspicious circumstances.
There was a previous house, the east side, which was used for the Hare Orphanage. What we find in 1907 then is the talk about the property on Tuller Street. Whatever the existing house is now being purchased, and this is the one that's reported in the paper in 1907, having the large front lawn, and the children will be able to play. 19th century, children couldn't play in parks. They were expected to play in the street. Parks were for adults to ride their carriages through. There's so little information about the children themselves, but here we have in 1906, the average number of children in the home for the year was 32. And the children's records themselves are sealed. And they would have been carefully recorded, who had brought them into the orphanage, what was the perhaps circumstances under which they were there. In this particular case in 1929, the father has been dead for years. There are 5 girls, 3 boys. They are living on the west side of Columbus, and they are destitute. There is another here who the mother has been dead for a year. 2 girls and 1 boy are in the family. The father works for the Big 4 Railroad and was transferred out of Columbus to Bellefontaine, Ohio. Although these children have entered in 29, 28, 32, 31, we are now really in the Depression, with the fall of the stock market in 29.
Oh my gosh.
There it is.
Byron Blake.
Read it.
126-33, mother unmarried, works at State Hospital. Record not submitted to Hare. I turned the page, 126-33. What year was he born? Oh, he was
27.
So he was
He was
6 years old here.
27, yeah, he was still 6 here.
So this wouldn't have been an official record, but this would have
Right.
been embedded in a letter. So the official record is probably still what they're going to find in the
Yes.
archive.
Very interesting.
In essence, the Hare Orphanage is becoming a concern of bureaucracy. It is in itself taking up a great deal of the city's time. Between that and there's a big discussion in child welfare about foster care. Is an orphanage really the best place for children? By the time we get to 1935, the city itself is now moving in other bureaucratic ways, and one of the ways is the regulation of daycares. And with daycares, they insist there has to be walls that have fire retardant in them. The orphanage itself doesn't have any of this. So what's going to begin to happen is by the city's own rules and regulations, the orphanage is now technically obsolete. And it is a burden physically and possibly a danger to the children until it finally will close by about 57. The city has to make a determination of what do we do with the money from the Hare? If we don't have this as an orphanage, what do we do with this building? And that's when the decision is made to give it to the Big Brothers, which is Big Brothers, not Big Brothers and Sisters. The records are put into the basement for many, many years until they're found, which is why they're here.